The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
It is so exciting to be with you today after a very, very long moving weekend, stage one of the transition and expansion of the show. Plenty of good moving stories to talk to you about on today's bonus show, but we have to get right into the news that's going on. Last night, certain provisions of the Patriot Act were allowed to expire by the U.S. Senate. The Senate entered this debate period last night on the Patriot Act that pushed beyond the midnight deadline, which effectively ended three provisions of the law, including this controversial National Security Agency bulk data collection program, which has been the center of just a ton of controversy over the last year plus at this point. Officials previously indicated they would shut the program down around 8 p.m. to ensure all procedures were in place before midnight, and indeed they did that at 7:44 p.m. Eastern Time, according to what a government official said to CNN. The Senate is expected to restore the expiring authorities around the middle of this week. So let's talk about these three provisions. Number one, the biggest, most controversial one is the government's sweeping powers under Section 215. These are the powers that allow the NSA to collect telephone metadata on millions of Americans and store the data for 5 years. That, for the time being, Lewis, is gone, and certainly that's the piece that I think most people are familiar with.
Yeah, and I think the piece that the NSA is the most reliant on. That's the big one.
Law enforcement officials also won't be allowed to get a roving wiretap to track terror suspects who frequently change communication devices like phones. Instead, they will have to get individual warrants for each new device. And third, the government loses this legal provision which allows it to use national security tools against, quote, lone wolf terror suspects if officials can't find a connection to a foreign terror group such as ISIS, for example. That provision has never even been used, according to the Justice Department. But the tools are not completely gone. FBI and NSA officials are actually allowed to continue using Section 215 as well as the roving wiretap provision if these are investigations that were already in process before June 1st. And we can only assume, Lewis, that any number of these investigations were already in process.
I'm sure any number of compelling investigations. Who knows how many? But does that make sense to us that they can continue those?
I don't know. I mean, in one sense, if we trust that at the time the justification given to start those investigations was legitimate, then it would make sense to continue them. On the other hand, if we're saying these are no longer techniques that can be used, why are we allowing them to continue merely because they were used before they were no longer allowed to be used, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like we started waterboarding this guy before we outlawed it. So, maybe we can continue waterboarding just him.
In the meantime, we're hearing from Attorney General Loretta Lynch. We are hearing from the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, that not having these provisions, these techniques available to security agencies puts us all at great danger. And let me remind everybody that most of the spy powers that we've become aware of are not actually from the Patriot Act. They're from the less well-known Executive Order 12333, as I like to call it, and from Section 702 of FISA. That's where the bulk of domestic spying programs were revealed from the Edward Snowden leak. So let's remember two things. Number one, these will likely be back within a few days. And number two, the Patriot Act is not the container of most of these provisions, and I think a lot of people forget that.
It's also possible that this could come back under a different name, because I'm pretty sure people now know what the Patriot Act really is, and they don't like it.
Of course, it could come back as the Freedom Restoration Act of patriotism and all good things American. Yeah, you can call it whatever you want, and that certainly has an impact on how people feel about it. We've talked, including as recently as last week, about the disparity and double standard that exists in terms of the reporting with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Last week, I gave you the example of destruction of Palestinian tunnels in Gaza. When Israel does it, outrage, yet Egypt just destroyed over 500, not even reported by most anti-Israeli news agencies who claim that they are just concerned with the plight of Palestinians. We now have another data point illustrating this double standard. You probably remember, if you were paying attention to our show, you certainly would, the conflict that took place, the flare-up that took place last summer in Israel. And you heard, I'm sure, a ton of reporting of injury and death caused by the Israeli military. We now have a study from Amnesty International called Strangling Necks, Abduction, Torture, and Summary Killings of Palestinians by Hamas Forces during the 2014 Gaza-Israel conflict. It highlights a long list of abuses, including the extrajudicial execution of over 20 Palestinians, the arrest and torture of dozens of others, including members of Hamas's political rivals, Fatah. Quote from the report, remember, this is from Amnesty International. Quote, "In the chaos of the conflict, the de facto Hamas administration granted its security forces free rein to carry out horrific abuses, including against people in its custody. These spine-chilling actions, some of which amount to war crimes, were designed to exact revenge and spread fear across the Gaza Strip. Many of these unlawful killings were publicly billed as attacks against people assisting Israel during July and August of 2014. We know, of course, that it was all lies. It's like when North Korea executes people, Lewis, based on absurd, fabricated charges. We know from the report about 6 men killed by Hamas forces outside Gaza's Old City in front of spectators. We know of Hamas forces abducting, torturing, and attacking members and supporters of Fatah. No one has been held responsible. Nothing on all of the normal players in anti-Israeli propaganda.
Hamas, I mean, it's a terrorist organization. We've known this. They're barbaric. They intentionally launch missiles from civilian sites. They hope that missiles return and kill civilians. I mean, it's all part of the plan. And fear is, is the number one tactic of a terrorist organization.
Of course. And as we know, Hamas not allowing civilians to leave their homes, even though Israel has already dropped leaflets indicating they will be dropping, they will be striking, airstriking nearby, because Hamas knows that they get significant PR benefit from those dead civilians. So this is not about cheerleading Israel. We absolutely have condemned numerous times the Netanyahu administration. We condemn the religious right coalition that he has built. We have condemned the settlements that Israel is involved in. Those are a complete barrier, an immoral barrier to peace. But we have to report on the huge double standard that exists, including, we could argue, particularly amongst so-called progressive media with regard to Israel. And we will continue exposing it as we see it, Lewis.
Yeah, we have to. Most of the coverage is terrible. And so, someone has to report on stuff like this.
Former House Speaker Dennis Hastert paid a man to conceal sexual misconduct while the man was a student at the high school where Dennis Hastert used to teach, according to a federal law enforcement official and the statements that they made to NBC News over the weekend. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity. Tribune newspapers reported earlier in the day that 2 unnamed federal officials said that Hastert paid a man from his past to conceal sexual misconduct. Dennis Hastert has been indicted on charges that he structured bank withdrawals to avoid federal reporting requirements and later lied about it to the FBI. The indictment says that Dennis Hastert was paying an unidentified person from his past to conceal what is being described as prior sexual misconduct. The indictment alleges, and listen to these numbers, that Dennis Hastert withdrew $1.7 million from 2010 to 2014 and gave it to the unidentified person. He's also accused of withdrawing nearly $1 million of that $1.7 million in increments of less than $10,000. So as to avoid regulations that require banks to report withdrawals over that amount. And Hastert agreed in 2010 to pay Individual A, as they're known in the indictment, a total of $3.5 million in compensation. When you heard this story, Lewis, what stood out to you?
What stood out to me? I mean, the amount of money we're talking about here, to me, is just, it's staggering.
Hastert was a public school teacher from 1965 to 1981. Then he went into the Illinois state legislature, appointed, not elected, mind you, and then to Congress, again appointed, not elected. So he'd been in public service his professional career. Now Congress is paid $174,000 a year. At the time that Hastert was there, it was less. Still a very nice salary, but not the amount that would create lifetime wealth. So how did someone who was just a school teacher and then got appointed to some public service positions create the amount of wealth that allowed him to skim $3.5 million from his own accounts to cover himself? Oh, that's right. During his time as a congressman, he was essentially applying to be a lobbyist, which he did, made millions of dollars with clients like the Turkish government. He got lucky with some real estate investments. There was a $200 million earmark for a $200 million earmark that happened to pass through property he bought for cheap. It's all a big coincidence, Lewis. And this is, if there's ever been evidence of how our system is so corrupt and clearly not conducive to the interests of the average voter, it's that Dennis Hastert had $3.5 million to cover up the things he did wrong, allegedly.
And now people know why we have so many scumbags in Congress. Yeah, I mean, look at this. Look at the advantages. Look at the possibilities when you are holding a position like that. That's what makes it appealing to so many people who don't really care about what's happening in the country.
I've told you about the liberalization of America on many issues over time, including abortion and gay marriage and government providing a basic level of health care to everybody and income inequality. And we now have a new poll out from Gallup that shows the continued progressivization of America on a broader range of issues. They asked in 2001 and in 2015 and in years in between, but this report shows us the change over the last 14 years about the moral acceptability of certain issues and actions. So, for example, gay or lesbian relations were morally acceptable to 40% of Americans in 2001. Okay. 2015, gay or lesbian relations are acceptable to 63% of Americans. Having a baby outside of marriage has increased from 45% acceptability to 61%. Sex between an unmarried man and woman has increased from 53% acceptable in 2001 to 68% acceptable. Controversial medical research using embryonic stem cells has increased in acceptability from 52% to 64%. The acceptability of divorce up to 71% from 59%. Doctor-assisted suicide has climbed from 49% to 56%. Interestingly, some decreases in the moral acceptability. Death penalty is only 60% morally acceptable today to Americans, down from 63% in 2001. That one I'm actually surprised hasn't decreased even more, Lewis.
Yeah, the whole thing is, we're not talking about massive increases here, I don't think. Over 20% in some cases.
Yeah.
But
over 20 percentage points, which could represent up to nearly 40%.
That is true. Yeah. But, that one, the gay or lesbian relationships one, we knew the direction that was headed in.
No question.
Yeah. But a lot of this is, not too surprising to me. I mean, we've known about this trend for a while, haven't we?
Absolutely. And I was also pleased to see that medical testing on animals has dropped from 65% morally acceptable in 2001 to 56% now. Most surprising, maybe, is that buying and wearing clothing made of animal fur is unchanged over the last 14 years, from 60 to 61%. That's interesting. We could discuss that. But certainly we have to assume, Lewis, that over the long term, this progressivization on just about every important issue is going to cycle back and impact policy. It might just take a while.
Yeah, it could take 20 years. But if the entire country is moving in one direction, that means the right has to move in that direction by default. So things are going to change, but we need almost everyone in Congress to cycle out, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly an issue of the money is still behind a lot of the status quo in Congress, and their views are not changing by and large. That we know. Let's take a break. We will talk to you about the campaign, the fundraising campaign that has launched, and so much more. Joining you today from the temporary studio, pre-Boston.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show is made possible through our membership program at davidpakman.com/membership. And today's new member of the day is Meg O. Lucan. Meg O. Lucan, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Meg gets the world-famous bonus show where I will be telling some incredibly harrowing stories from the move over the weekend. Lewis hasn't heard these yet, and I'm deliberately not telling him. So we will get his authentic reaction on today's bonus show. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up today. Remember that if you ever shop on Amazon.com, you can support the work we're doing by first going to our website, davidpakman.com, and clicking on the Amazon banner at the right side of the page. Then just do your shopping as normal. A ton of Minecraft-related stuff, Lewis, including books like Minecraft in the Classroom, have been purchased through our link lately. Are you sort of following the Minecraft craze? I've read quite a bit about it, and my little sister is getting into Minecraft now.
I haven't read much about it. Here and there, I'll see something on the various websites I look at. I've played it quite a bit, and I enjoy it. I think it's a great game, a great tool, and yeah, I suppose it could be a great thing for students as well.
Yeah, what do you think it is about Minecraft that has kind of allowed it to overlap into education and so many other areas where there seems to be a sort of higher acceptability as something more than just entertainment with Minecraft?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's really easy to use, and it has been developed in such a way so that there are, it's not just playing the game isn't the only thing you can do with the game. There are lots of other things you can do, and it's hard to explain, but I guess it is a great tool.
I'm curious if the person who bought that book is actually a teacher who is using Minecraft in classrooms to teach students. Also, a bunch of people buying these Fitbits, Lewis, which I guess it's described as a physical fitness technology tool. It's like a little device that you clip to your body. It measures how much you walk around. It measures how many steps you've taken, calories burned. Maybe it has some nutrition or diet-related thing, but these are all the rage now.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think people have been tricked into thinking they need them.
Really?
But yeah, I have. I guess if it helps, whatever, that's good. But I don't know. It just seems unnecessary to me.
So you won't be buying one, is the long and short of it.
No. I don't even think I would take one for free.
Wow. That's stunning. So anyway, a lot of our audience feels very differently than Lewis here. Send us email if you have one of these Fitbits. What has it allowed you to do? What do you think about it? Send us your thoughts. And remember, always use the Amazon banner on the right side of davidpakman.com before you shop on Amazon. A suicidal man's girlfriend called 911 to get help for him, and cops shot him dead. We're talking about 28-year-old Florida man Justin Way, who told his girlfriend that he was planning to kill himself. She called St. Johns County Sheriff's Office for help, saying, "He's threatened to kill himself twice now. What do I do? Who do I call? He recently lost his job, and he's also been drinking." The woman, the girlfriend, reassured the 911 operator that Way wouldn't hurt her. Two police officers, Kyle Bragg and Jonas Carbolosa, show up at Justin Way's condo. Way is in his bed with the serrated knife that he was threatening to use on himself. This is clearly a social service type intervention for police. The police tell his girlfriend to wait outside. They enter Way's bedroom and shoot him in the chest and abdomen, allegedly before he could even sit up in his bed. Way's girlfriend told the Daily Beast that she assumed Way would be Baker acted, which is involuntary commitment to a mental institution for his own protection, and that he never threatened to hurt her or anybody else with the knife. The police report given to Way's father says, oh, no. He attacked 2 deputies with a knife. George Way finds that strange, though, because he saw the mattress from his son's room. Justin's parents don't believe his son was a threat, and they believe that he was shot while still lying in his bed. A quote from his father: "If Justin was coming at them with a knife at 6'4", wouldn't there be blood splattered all over the room?" Way's parents brought Justin's mattress to the curb after his death, and George, his father, says he believes there was a bullet dug out of the bed from a hole found in the middle of it. And he also says the blood was completely contained on the mattress, nothing on the wall, nothing on the floor, which would not support the idea that he rushed out of his mattress to attack police. Regardless of that, Lewis, why can't police be better equipped to deal with what are clearly social service mental health situations? We end up with a suicide help call leading to a man dead.
They aren't trained for it. I think if they are trained for it, it's probably not good enough, whatever that training may be. I think this is the 3rd or 4th story that I've heard of this exact same situation where someone is suicidal, cops show up and just kill the person.
Well, one of the deputies involved in the shooting, in this particular shooting, Kyle Bragg, he was involved in a fatal shooting of another man armed with a knife just last December. And the Daily Beast points out that there is a Facebook comment from the other cop, Jonas Carbollosa, which was, quote, "Most people respect the badge. Everyone respects the gun." Let's talk about that gun. We've talked about overuse of tasers so many times. Wouldn't this have been a time to maybe taser the guy if it's true that you have an agitated, suicidal man with a knife? If you even think you need to use any kind of weapon, maybe this is actually an opportunity to taser instead of to shoot. Not that I endorse using tasers haphazardly. I believe tasers should truly be used when you would otherwise use a gun. But still, given the more colloquial and casual use of tasers that we've seen, why not use a taser this time instead of shooting the guy twice?
I think this is the perfect opportunity to use a taser. I would have suggested the use of a taser in this situation.
If we believe what the cops are saying, right? Which is that they were rushed by Justin Way with a knife.
No, not necessarily. Even if you have someone who is about to kill themselves, if the man is holding a knife to his own body, I think you are able to use the taser there as well to make sure that he doesn't kill himself. And
I see what you're saying, right? You wouldn't shoot someone. You wouldn't shoot someone to prevent them from cutting themselves, but maybe using a taser if you determine that that person is really at risk of their own life by their own hand. Maybe you could even save a life with a taser, you're saying.
Exactly. But in a situation like this, I can't speak for the cops, but perhaps they just wanted to shoot someone.
I can understand why people would be hesitant to call police. One wrong move and what should be a mental health intervention turns into a police killing. It is very, very disturbing. I spoke to you last week about Josh Duggar, the son of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, who have a total of 19 kids. They have this reality show on TLC, which has still not been canceled, called 19 Kids and Counting. Josh Duggar abused multiple girls, including some of his own sisters. I discussed with you that Jim Bob brought the matter to a state trooper down in Arkansas, and that went absolutely nowhere because the state trooper himself ended up in prison for child porn. This case, which has revealed some of the problems that exist when you let Christian conservatives abuse children in Arkansas, goes well beyond the Duggar family. Remember that story I told you, I think it was a few months ago, Lewis, of Congressman Justin Harris and his wife, who have not faced a single consequence since news broke that they gave away 2 adopted daughters to a man who later sexually assaulted one of the girls, although state legislators changed a state law to prevent others from doing the same thing. The Harrises took in 3 girls in 2011, and through the Department of Human Services, they were able to adopt them, and they were supposedly, according to DHS, told that these girls had some trauma in their past. The Harrises said they were not made aware of that trauma. They didn't know anything about it. And they essentially gave the girls away to an associate of Justin Harris. That is the guy who ultimately sexually assaulted these girls. They rehomed them, as we've talked about. The Harrises also believed that those girls were possessed by demons and they had an exorcism performed. So more Christian sexual abuse, more Christian physical abuse and emotional abuse. And there have been no consequences whatsoever for the Duggars nor for the Harrises in Arkansas. What is going on there, Lewis?
I wish I could tell you. You've got friends protecting friends, Christians protecting Christians. And I think it is that friendship, brotherhood mentality that is getting in the way here. And
Christians are calling anti-Christian discrimination on those who are reacting to these cases and saying, what is going on here? Instead of a bunch of you all hate Christian type responses, I would have so much more respect for the Christian community or certain elements of it if they said, wow, it really looks like we have some problems to sort out. It really looks like the judicial and law enforcement status quo in Arkansas is not properly addressing the problem that we have. But no, we're just hearing, hey, you're all discriminating against Christians by criticizing what's going on. And meanwhile, the Duggars reality show still has not been canceled. The family has admitted that the abuse took place. All of these individuals involved with this show, and the reality show parade continues.
The show must be doing really well because you would think that in most cases it would be shut down pretty quick. The show sounds terrible. I don't know who would watch that, but it must be doing well.
I've seen 5 minutes of it. It is cringeworthy. It's just such a disaster. I mean, I don't know how it would even be considered disaster porn. It's just nothing about it is even remotely interesting. We will continue to follow what happens in Arkansas. And next, the big news, the campaign is on for Boston 2016. That's next.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
We announced several weeks ago that the David Pakman Show will be moving to Boston, Massachusetts, expanding our studio, hoping to hire producer Lewis as the full-time production manager on the show, bringing on a new host to do co-hosting, guest hosting, investigative journalism, developing a mobile studio so we can broadcast from conventions and debates, and also launching a brand awareness campaign. We also mentioned we need to raise the money to do all that. We are officially live with our Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. So for everybody who has emailed and said, I would definitely contribute to that, this is the time to do it. There is a link on our website, davidpakman.com, to the campaign. You can also pull up the campaign directly by going to this address, igg.me/at/TDPS10. That's a mouthful. I'll say it again when we're done talking about this. The goal is to raise $50,000 in 50 days. Doing some very simple math, Lewis, that tells me we need to raise $1,000 per day. We did a soft launch yesterday. We just notified people who asked to be notified early and our members, and we raised $1,274 on day one, exceeding the day one goal by 27.4%. I love the round numbers on this. It really makes the math very easy. So we hit the goal for day one. Day two is today. We already raised almost another 1,000. So as of right now, we are at 2208, meaning we have already hit the $2,000 threshold for day two. We are on target. The way these things tend to work is at the beginning, you get a bunch of donations, and then at the end, you get a bunch of donations. But in the middle, there's this kind of lull. So actually, I think we need to get ahead as much as possible, Lewis. If we can get to 10,000 in the first 6 days, that would be really great. And I have some data about contributions so far. Average contribution so far is $76. Contributions range from as little as $2 to as much as $300. Every contribution counts. Every single contributor counts. I don't care if you can only donate $1. If 1,000 people donate $1, we will very quickly become one of the featured campaigns on Indiegogo because of the sheer number of contributors. So whenever people talk to me about this, Louis, I say, don't not contribute because you feel that your contribution is too small. Every contribution is important.
Of course. I mean, if everyone listening to this right now contributed $3 to $5,
the campaign would be over. That's it. I mean, we're done. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, no amount of money is negligible.
We have great perks available. One of the popular ones so far is what we're calling the complete or the total package, which is at the $300 level. You get a bunch of our premiums, a t-shirt, hoodie, bumper stickers, the whole package. We also have a lot of people getting just the t-shirts. The bumper stickers are popular. The Patriot Mail related perks are still available. And I think that once we fully launch the campaign, those will start to sell. We've already received contributions from the United States, Australia, Canada, Italy, and the Netherlands. I would love it if we had donations from 20 countries by the time this thing is all said and done.
I think that could happen. I mean, I'm quite confident that there will be at least a few more European countries that will make that list. And I don't know, David, maybe Argentina will make the list too. I mean, your home country.
I would love it. Although the financial situation there with spending money outside of Argentina is so complex. That should actually be a story that we do someday because it is incredible what's going on there. Also, you can refer people to the campaign. If you go to the campaign, which again is at igg.me/at/TDPS10, you'll see on the left side that there are social media share buttons, Facebook, Twitter, email, etc. Use those buttons to share the campaign, thanks to Stephen Farwell and Matt Pace, who have already referred people to our campaign. Anything that you can do helps. We really need a successful campaign here to be able to do everything that we want to do. And we're off to a good start, Louis.
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, if we are on track, as long as we are on track, I'm satisfied.
And the further ahead we can get, the better, because in the middle, there tends to be this lull. Last thing, if you're not currently a member, any contribution you make at all will get you the option to buy a half-priced membership as well. Any contribution, we will email people with those details. The Republican governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, has vetoed one of those anti-gay religious freedom bills. This is the same Republican governor, remember, Louis, who campaigned on not pushing any abortion-related legislation and then was pushing a bill to prevent teachers from talking about abortion. And when he got called out, obviously, for contradicting, to going against what he campaigned on, he said, no, this isn't an abortion bill. This is just an education bill. It just so happens it's about education related to abortion. That same Pat McCrory has decided to veto the bill that the North Carolina legislature gave final approval to late last week. He said he will not allow this bill to go through, saying, quote, "For many North Carolinians, including myself, opinions on same-sex marriage come from sincerely held religious beliefs that marriage is between a man and a woman. But we are a nation and a state of laws. No public official who voluntarily swears to support and defend the Constitution and to discharge all duties of their office should be exempt from upholding that oath." This is being hailed as this huge heroic statement, especially coming from a Republican. But the reality is that every religious official should have this point of view, no matter what my personal beliefs are and what I would like the law to be. Law based on religion violates separation of church and state, period. And it doesn't matter which religion it is. You don't grant special privileges or exemptions from the law because of religion. This should be 100% predominant.
Once you reach a certain level of religiousness or religiosity, not quite sure which word to use there, then according to you, the laws should reflect that, should reflect your religion, and the two aren't separated. So, you're not going to convince those people that this is the correct choice. And I'm not sure that he would normally make this choice if he didn't see what happened in other states, the PR backlash after enacting a law like this.
Sure, some of this might be just pragmatic, kind of like a PR decision to keep things as quiet as possible. Another simple way to say this is your religion does not give you a say about other people's business. Full stop. You don't need to add a single word to that.
Your religion does not dictate the laws of your state or the laws of your country, and that should apply to all religions. Let's not have the two interfering with each other.
It doesn't apply to all countries, though. That we know for sure.
Oh, no way.
All right, we'll take a break. We have voicemail coming up next. We have an interesting situation. What's been going on with Bernie Sanders, basically on all corporate media, is happening with Rand Paul on Fox News. I'll tell you about that after the break. The fundraiser is on at igg.me/at/TDPS10.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The Nebraska state legislature voted to repeal the death penalty, overriding the governor's veto. According to the state constitution there, the measure needed a minimum of 30 out of 49 senators, and that's exactly the number that they got. The law takes effect in 90 days. It bans the use of lethal injection. The 10 men who are currently on death row will never be executed because the repeal took away any legal means to do the execution. This is the second time that the first-term Republican governor there, Pete Ricketts, has seen his veto turned back. The last time was when lawmakers overrode him on a bill that increases gasoline taxes. The last execution in Nebraska was carried out in 1997. The death penalty is still legal in 31 states. 19 states plus Washington, D.C., do not have the death penalty. This is a very good bit of news.
Yeah, and pretty embarrassing for the governor. But I guess, are the people of Nebraska being spoken for here? Is that what's happening?
That's really what the question should be, right? Because ultimately it should be based on constituents. Oh, wait, no. As we've talked about, when it comes to, for example, voting on gay rights, we don't put rights up to a vote. So I actually, I go back and forth. I think it's so important that we have elected officials that represent the wills and desires of the constituents, while at the same time, issues of basic human decency and rights should not be put up to popular vote. And we know that 1 in 25 on death row is innocent. We know that it's hugely expensive, more so than life without parole, to execute someone, in part because of the appeals. And you need the appeals because 1 in 25 on death row are innocent. And we know that the appeals prolong the suffering of the victims' families. And we know that the death penalty is not a deterrent to crime. And there's this arbitrary nature to when the death penalty is sought. The racial disparities in terms of the application of the death penalty. The state should not be in the business of killing people. And it just so happens that they kill innocent people at a huge cost to taxpayers. It should just be gone, I would argue, no matter what the individual constituents of the state or country believe.
Perhaps, but then are we moving away from a democracy? You could argue that.
But Lewis, if everybody wanted to reinstate slavery, would that be a democratic decision that we should follow? No, we've decided that people have rights, and that includes the right not to be owned.
That is true. That is true. So, there are lines. Where do you draw those lines? What is a democracy? What is a republic? That's a different discussion, I suppose. But I agree. The death penalty, it's embarrassing to live in a country where we have the death penalty. it's archaic and it's got to go.
And we've talked about how every other country at our level of development has already gotten rid of the death penalty. Look at who else has the death penalty and ask yourselves whether those are countries that Republicans ever like to compare the U.S. to. That will very quickly tell you a lot about the company that we keep with regard to the death penalty. We've been talking a lot about the general blackout of Bernie Sanders as a Democratic presidential candidate. The New York Times forgot to include him in a big 2016 election piece. CNN announced that Martin O'Malley would be Hillary Clinton's first rival, in spite of the fact that Bernie Sanders was already running at the time and raised a huge amount of money his first day campaigning. And now Fox News, again, forgot to include Senator Rand Paul in their coverage of the 2016 presidential race, even though the senator outperformed other candidates that they did mention in that poll. Quinnipiac released a poll featuring the headline, 5 leaders in the 2016 Republican White House race. And it found that Marco Rubio and Rand Paul are the only Republicans even close to Hillary Clinton. Fox News did coverage of that survey. They just removed Rand Paul altogether. In the poll, Rand Paul had 7% support. He was ahead of Ted Cruz, who received 6%. Cruz was featured by Fox News. Rand Paul wasn't. You know who was discussed from this poll by Fox News, Lewis? Donald Trump.
Incredible. Yeah. Well, I guess Rand Paul is the Bernie Sanders of the Republican Party.
With regard to Fox News anyway, because Fox News 2 weeks ago, they did an in-house poll which had different Republicans against Hillary Clinton. And somehow they didn't ask anybody about Rand Paul versus Hillary Clinton. He wasn't part of that poll. In early May, Fox News put Rand Paul's name last, even though he was the highest polling candidate among the 4 featured. It was like, Jeb Bush, 42%, Marco Rubio, 41%, Jeb Bush, 39%. And then at the bottom was Rand Paul, even though he had like close to 50%. If you're ordering them by number, Rand Paul should have been at the top. You don't have to agree with Rand Paul's views. I don't agree with many of Rand Paul's views to recognize that this is absolutely wrong.
And I guess we're starting to see this election cycle that, we're starting to see. We thought things couldn't get any worse with corporate media. They're taking it to a new level. And I guess we could call this irresponsible, right?
Oh, it's absolutely irresponsible. And I actually wonder what the impetus is. Is it that for Fox News, it's complex to include Rand Paul because of some overlap between the traditional Fox News audience and the more libertarian group? I'm trying to come up with why Fox News would do this. Maybe Fox News doesn't want anybody to know that Rand Paul is polling well because they want Hillary Clinton to win because they know they do better when there's a Democrat in the White House to criticize. I'm just speaking extemporaneously here. I can't figure out why Fox News is doing this.
Yeah. Do they have a horse in the race? It's got to be a business decision. So maybe you're right. Whatever that decision is, it's definitely based on money.
We have a voicemail number that you can call anytime. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. We got a voicemail from a truck driver. Let's take a listen.
Hey, David. My name is Phil. I'm a former truck driver calling out of Gary, Indiana. I love your show, man. Keep up the good work, and I'll be getting in contact with you in the future. Thanks, man.
Oh, thank you. We actually have a pretty big contingent of truckers who listen to this show. There's the BLT, the Black Lesbian Trucker. That's how she describes herself. I don't want anybody to think that I'm just deciding to call her that. We have Dion, the truck driver. We have there's probably 5 or 6 truckers who call us, and then we have to assume that there's many more who don't. I think that if I was a trucker, I would definitely be listening to a lot of podcasts and shows.
A lot of heavy metal and podcasts and shows. Yes, without a doubt.
On today's bonus show, why do couples who cohabitate have a higher divorce rate? A study says exactly that. Manslaughter for a bartender who served a man 56 shots. We talked about this story when it started months ago, and now we have more information about it. We will also talk about female gaming escorts in China, and I will tell you some harrowing stories from my move over the weekend to start phase 1 of the David Pakman Show 10-year anniversary expansion. All of that and more. You don't want to miss these stories. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.